Willie Nelson's story is one of pain, survival, and music carrying him through when life seemed unbearable. For decades, he held on to a secret that weighed heavily on him every single day. After the passing of his close friend and bandmate Kris Kristofferson, Willie could no longer stay silent. He admitted that Kris wasn't just his partner in music, he was the reason Willie made it through some of the darkest years of his life. But the heartbreaking part was that Willie only revealed this after Kris had already gone. In his own words, he confessed that he hated himself for never saying it while Kris was alive. What he revealed about those desperate nights was enough to break anyone's heart. Willie's life began in hardship. He was born on April 29, 1933, in Abbott, Texas, a tiny town of only about 300 people, right in the middle of the Great Depression. Times were brutal. Millions of people had no work, and families barely had food. His mother left when Willie was just 6 months old, saying she was going to look for work, but she never came back. Not once. His father left soon after, abandoning Willie and his sister Bobby. The children were raised by their grandparents, Nancy and Alfred. The family had almost nothing. Winters in their small house were so cold that they glued old newspapers to the walls just to keep the wind out. At only 7 years old, Willie was already out in the cotton fields working long hours under the hot Texas sun after school, just so his family could buy food. That same year, he almost didn't make it. In 1940, Willie caught pneumonia, a sickness that was deadly for children back then. Thousands of kids died from it every year. Willie pulled through, but the illness left him with a toughness that never left him. His grandparents gave him discipline and faith, but also music. His grandmother taught piano, and his grandfather Alfred worked as a blacksmith. At 6 years old, his grandfather gave him his very first guitar. It wasn't fancy, but for Willie, it was life-changing. By the time he was 7, he was already writing songs. By the age of 10, he was performing in local bars, making more money playing music than most adults earned picking cotton. But even with his gift, his childhood wasn't easy. His grandmother was deeply religious and raised him in the Methodist church. She wouldn't allow dancing, saying it was sinful. Willie went along, singing in the choir every Sunday like the perfect church boy. But secretly, he was already rebelling, smoking cigarettes, sneaking beers, and listening to Bob Wills and his Texas Playboys on the radio, music his grandmother would have called the devil's work. He lived with a constant fear of going to hell, but music gave him freedom. In 1939, tragedy struck again. Willie was just 6 when his grandfather Alfred, the man who had given him his first guitar and been like a father to him, died of pneumonia. Losing him was devastating. Willie said it felt like losing a son. From then on, life got even harder. He woke before school to milk cows and worked long hours just to help the family survive. That loss shaped him. It made him tougher, more independent, and gave rise to the stubborn outlaw spirit that later defined his career. By 17, in 1950, Willie joined the U.S. Air Force, eager to serve after finishing high school. But his time there was short-lived. Only 9 months in, he suffered a serious back injury while lifting heavy equipment. He was discharged and suddenly found himself without money, without a plan, and without the future he thought he'd have. Once again, he turned back to the only thing that had never left him, music. In 1956, Willie moved to Vancouver, Washington, and worked as a radio DJ at a small station called KVAN. That's where he recorded his very first single, No Place for Me, with another song called Lumberjack on the flip side. He didn't wait for a big label to help him. Instead, he created his own, Willie Nelson Records. He sold the records himself, along with signed photos, for just $1 each. Stardom Records turned him down, saying they didn't want to release it, but that didn't stop him. Using his radio show to connect directly with people, Willie sold 3,000 copies on his own. Even after selling thousands of his own records, Willie Nelson was still struggling to survive. The music industry was brutal, and money was always tight. He worked long nights, washed dishes, and even tried out for a show called Ozark Jubilee, but they turned him away. Tired and broke, he finally gave up and went back home to Texas. There, he did whatever he could just to feed his family, selling Bibles door to door, pushing vacuum cleaners, and even working as a sales manager for Encyclopedia Americana. Life was hard, but all that pain and rejection would later become the raw truth in his music. In Fort Worth, Willie began playing in rough honky-tonk bars. These places were wild, filled with fights, broken bottles, and drunken chaos. Willie quickly realized he needed protection just to make it through the nights. That's when he brought in Paul English, a drummer who looked like trouble with his devilish goatee and habit of carrying guns. English kept the crowds in check and made sure nobody messed with Willie. Still, Willie sometimes had to fight back himself when strangers tried to control his music. Those nights were dangerous, but they taught him how to command a crowd and survive in a cutthroat business. In 1959, a moment came that broke his heart but also changed his path forever. Willie was broke and facing eviction when he sold one of his songs, Family Bible, for just $50. The song went on to become a massive hit, but for someone else. Not long after, he sold another song, Nightlife, for only $150. That one too became a goldmine for others. Watching his music make fortunes for other people while he stayed broke taught him the most important lesson of his career. Always own your songs. That wisdom would later help him build real wealth. By 1960, Willie was nearly 30 and desperate. He moved to Nashville, the heart of country music, but things didn't get easier. He was broke, cold, and often slept in his car. One snowy night, he reached such a low point that he laid down in the snow, ready to let go of life. A friend found him just in time and saved him. Soon after, a songwriter named Harlan Howard heard Willie playing at Tootsie's Orchid Lounge, a famous Nashville bar. Howard believed in him and convinced Pampa Music to hire Willie for $50 a week as a songwriter. That small paycheck saved Willie's life. In 1961, everything changed when Willie wrote Crazy for Patsy Cline. At first, Patsy hated the song. Her husband had been playing it non-stop until she finally gave in and listened. Once she sang it, Crazy became her biggest hit and a crossover success that took country music into the mainstream. But while the song made huge money, Willie saw very little of it. The record labels took nearly everything. That betrayal left Willie bitter and angry at the Nashville system. He released his first album, And Then I Wrote, in 1962. It had future classics like Crazy and Funny How Time Slips Away. But while others made those songs into hits, nobody wanted to hear them sung by Willie himself. The album barely sold, and Willie had to go back to selling Bibles just to put food on the table. Later that same year, Liberty Records gave him another chance. His song Touch Me climbed to number 7 on the country charts. It was his first real taste of success, but he wanted control over his music. Liberty didn't like that. They wanted him to sound polished like everyone else, and Willie refused. So they dropped him. By 1963, Willie had joined Ray Price's band as a bass player, even though he barely knew how to play bass. The gig gave him the chance to tour and learn the stage, but it also pushed him deeper into heavy drinking. One night, drunk and broken, he got into a bad car crash that nearly killed him. It was a wake-up call, though it would take years for him to finally face his demons. Fast forward to 1979, and Willie's life took an unexpected turn. He was cast alongside Robert Redford in The Electric Horseman. Nobody expected the quiet, scruffy country singer to stand out on screen, but he shocked everyone. High on marijuana, Willie ignored the script and made up his own lines. Instead of failing, he stole the spotlight. The film, made on a $12 million budget, became a hit. Willie wasn't acting as someone else. He was just being himself, wild, funny, and unpredictable. That movie proved he was more than just a singer with a guitar. But long before that Hollywood breakthrough, his real transformation began in the early 1970s. After years of rejection, RCA Records dropped him in 1972. Nashville had no use for him anymore. Defeated but not broken, Willie returned to Texas. That's where he stumbled upon a new scene in Austin, filled with long-haired hippies, cowboys, and dreamers. At a quirky venue called the Armadillo World Headquarters, he found a home where everyone, outlaws and peace lovers alike, fit together. Willie belonged. In 1973, sitting in a hotel bathroom in New York, he scribbled the lyrics to Shotgun Willie on the back of a sanitary pad box. That crude moment sparked a new beginning. The album Shotgun Willie didn't sell big nationally, but in Austin it outsold everything he'd ever done. It only reached number 41 on the charts, but it lit a fire. Outlaw country was born. 2 years later, in 1975, Willie risked everything. With just $4,000 and full creative control, he recorded Red-Headed Stranger in a tiny Texas studio. The label hated it. They said it sounded unfinished, like demo tapes. Willie refused to change a single note. When the album was released, it shocked everyone. It went multi-platinum. His cover of Blue Eyes Crying in the Rain became his first #1 hit and earned him a Grammy. After 13 years without a top 10 single, Willie finally proved that raw, honest music could beat Nashville's polished machine. But fame came with shadows. In 1976, he joined Waylon Jennings on the album Wanted, The Outlaws. At first, no one expected much. It was just a mix of old songs and new ones. But the record exploded, becoming the first country album to sell 1 million copies. It even reached number 10 on the pop charts. Suddenly, Nashville had no choice but to take the Outlaws seriously. In 1977, Willie's outlaw image took a wild turn. He was arrested in the Bahamas after customs agents found marijuana in his jeans. He ended up in jail, but his friend Hank Cochran snuck him beer in his cell. When Willie was finally released, he jumped into the air in celebration, only to land himself in the hospital. The charges were dropped, but he was banned from the Bahamas for life. That ban is still in place today. By 1981, Willie's body was paying the price of his habits. While swimming in Hawaii, he felt a sharp pain in his chest. His lung had collapsed. Doctors told him it was from years of smoking 2 to 3 packs of cigarettes a day. He had to cancel 18 shows, losing nearly $900,000 in ticket sales. From then on, he quit tobacco, though he kept using marijuana, eventually switching to vaporizers to protect what was left of his lungs. In 1984, he appeared on Johnny Cash's Christmas special in Switzerland. After the filming, Willie sat down with Johnny, Waylon, and Kris Kristofferson. They played songs together, and by the time they returned to the US, they had decided to form a band. They called themselves the Highwaymen. Their 1985 album, Highwayman, went platinum. It was a dream supergroup of legends who felt left behind by modern radio. Not everyone loved their name. In 1990, a 1960s folk group called the Highwaymen tried to sue them. Willie Nelson's financial world collapsed in the early 1990s when the IRS came after him for $32 million in unpaid taxes. The trouble started because his accounting firm, Price Waterhouse, had placed his money in illegal tax shelters. When the truth came out, the government swooped in and seized nearly everything he owned. His ranch, his studio, his gold records, even his piano, all of it was gone. The only thing that survived was his beloved guitar, Trigger, which his daughter secretly hid away in Hawaii so the IRS couldn't touch it. Friends stepped in to buy back some of his belongings at auction, renting them back to him so he could at least keep working. Despite being a legend, Willie found himself broke, homeless, and deeply humiliated. But instead of giving up, he did something nobody had ever tried before. He recorded an album called the IRS Tapes. Who Will Buy My Memories? Just him and his guitar, raw and simple. Every copy sold sent money straight to the IRS. It didn't erase the massive debt completely, but it helped. More importantly, it made music history and showed the world how determined Willie was to fight back on his own terms. His troubles didn't stop there. In 1994, police found him asleep in his Mercedes on a Texas highway. In the ashtray was a marijuana joint. He was arrested again, but instead of hiding in shame, Willie turned the arrest into a platform. He began speaking publicly about marijuana reform, using his voice to push for change in laws he believed were unfair. Meanwhile, personal tragedy struck harder than any arrest or tax bill. On Christmas Day in 1991, His son Billy took his own life at just 33 years old. Billy had been struggling with depression, but just days earlier he had seemed hopeful. He bought new clothes and even got a haircut. Willie was devastated. He was already carrying the weight of his IRS battles, and losing his son nearly broke him completely. He later admitted those were the darkest days of his life. Willie's family life had already been messy before. His third wife, Connie, discovered that he had fathered a child with another woman after she found a hospital bill hidden away. That discovery led to divorce in 1988. By 1991, Willie married his fourth wife, Annie D'Angelo, who is still with him today. Willie later admitted he had a gift for complicating things, especially in love. Even his charity work came under fire. In 1985, he helped create Farm Aid to support struggling family farmers. In its first 3 years, the charity raised $12 million. But during Willie's tax battles, some people accused him of using the charity to get tax breaks. By 1995, Willie admitted that while the money was real, most of it went to farmers who were already too deep in debt to save their land. He couldn't fix a broken system, but he never stopped trying. Through it all, he never quit making music. In 1998, at 65 years old, he released an album unlike anything he had done before. It was called Teatro, and instead of recording it in a traditional studio, he recorded it inside an old movie theater in Oxnard, California. The unique setting gave the album a haunting, echoing quality. With Emmylou Harris singing in the background and stripped-down, atmospheric production, the album felt raw, dreamlike, and bold. Willie even revisited songs he had written decades earlier, like Darkness on the Face of the Earth and My Own Peculiar Way, giving them new power. The sessions were so unique that filmmaker Wim Wenders made a documentary about them. While Teatro didn't win any Grammys at the time, it proved something more important, that Willie was fearless. He wasn't afraid of age, change, or breaking every rule of country music. When the album was reissued in 2017 with 7 new songs, critics realized just how well it had stood the test of time. Then, in 2008, Willie shocked fans yet again. At 75 years old, he teamed up with Snoop Dogg on a song called My Medicine. Produced by Everlast, the track was a bold mix of country and rap, and the music video quickly went viral. Seeing the red-headed stranger rapping alongside a West Coast hip-hop legend stunned the world. Some older country fans were outraged, accusing Willie of tarnishing his image. But younger fans loved it, and the collaboration even charted in Europe, reaching number 39 in the Netherlands. Willie didn't care about fitting into boxes. He cared about staying true to himself. That collaboration showed that when the message is strong enough, even country and hip-hop can come together. In 2015, at the age of 82, Willie was honored with one of the greatest awards in American music, the Gershwin Prize for Popular Song from the Library of Congress. Standing on stage in Washington, D.C., singing On the Road Again to a packed house should have been a moment of pure triumph. But behind the scenes, Willie had just undergone experimental stem cell surgery on his lungs. Years of cigarette smoking, bouts of pneumonia, and a battle with emphysema had left his lungs in terrible shape. Doctors harvested stem cells from his body and injected them back into his lungs, hoping to rebuild healthy tissue. The surgery left him with painful stomach incisions and forced him to cancel shows, but within weeks he was back on stage. It wasn't just bravery, it was defiance. Even at an age when most people would retire, Willie refused to slow down. By 2020, he had received 52 Grammy nominations since 1974, making him one of the most nominated artists in history. That same year, he won his 10th Grammy for Ride Me Back Home in the Best Country Solo Performance category. Decades after he nearly froze to death in a Nashville snowbank, Willie Nelson was still standing tall, still making music, and still proving that nothing, tax bills, arrests, heartbreak, or age, could stop him. By the time Willie Nelson reached his late 70s and 80s, he was still winning Grammy Awards and breaking boundaries in music. In 2018, he took home Best Country Album for My Way. In 2016, he won Best Traditional Pop Vocal Album for Summertime. Willie Nelson Sings Gershwin. And back in 2007, He had already won Best Country Collaboration for Lost Highway. With those victories, he climbed to 14th place on the list of artists with the most Grammy nominations, standing alongside icons like Quincy Jones, Paul McCartney, and Jay-Z. What made this even more remarkable was not just the awards themselves, but the fact that he earned them at an age when most artists had long retired. Instead of slowing down, Willie kept pushing forward, experimenting with jazz, pop standards, country duets, and even rap. He refused to trap himself in a single style, proving that his legacy was not just about country music but about fearless creativity. Behind the spotlight, his personal life had been a storm until Annie D'Angelo entered it. Willie was already a legend when they met, but privately he was spiraling. His drinking was destroying his health and threatening his career. Annie, a makeup artist he had met years earlier on a film set, became the anchor he desperately needed. They married in 1991, and she set strict rules. In a 2024 interview, Annie explained the family motto she laid down for Willie: Don't be a goddamn asshole.